Welcome to the University of Liverpool, the original red brick, the original planning school, and original research.
Hello and welcome to this Planning Research Institute video. Today I'm joined by Professor Dave Shaw. Dave is an international expert in spatial planning, and recently he's been doing some research on offshore wind farms for a landlocked country, for Luxembourg in Western Europe. So Dave, tell us a bit about this project and why this project arose in the first place.
Well, this was a follow-up project for a bigger project we'd done for ESPON, which is the European Spatial Planning Observatory Network, which is a European group that provides evidence to regional policymakers. And we've done a project called Marine Spatial Planning and Land-Sea Interaction. And as a follow-up project, Luxembourg, who at the time were chair of the North Sea Commission looking at energy, asked us to investigate what role spatial planning had in delivering offshore wind farms. And that was at a time when the war in Ukraine had just started and that energy security was seen as being an important role. And politics at the time was beginning to suggest that spatial planning or planners were acting as a barrier to the delivery of offshore wind. And we were looking to see whether that was actually the case.
So it's a pretty common trope in all walks of being a planner that planners are the barrier. What did your research actually find?
Well, actually the research found that planning wasn't the barrier and planning was actually a facilitator. And some of the planning processes actually, if you like, reduced the conflicts that might have otherwise occurred without the planning process. So in essence, there were, if you like, we identified three kind of elements that were really important in terms of delivery. The first is having a spatial plan in place. So increasingly the seas have become more and more contested spaces where different groups wish to use a limited amount of space, and spatial planning as an activity has a role in, if you like, negotiating where things should be located. And for me, the plan is a very important element, but we don't then start to look at the next process, which is how the development is actually regulated and how permission is granted for new development to occur. So there's plan making, there's development regulation, but on top of that, there are a whole series of other factors which we call the framework conditions, and those framework conditions might include things such as whether there is sufficient human capacity to build the infrastructure, whether there is the incentives from the state to encourage the private market to move in to develop, what the level of risk might be. Those are things which to a certain extent are outside of the planning system, the formal planning system, but are very important ingredients in the delivery process.
Thanks. So obviously this research was primarily thinking about North Sea and...
Not just North Sea, it was European wide. And we're at the time, some countries had plans that had been adopted. Most countries, except for the northwestern European countries, really haven't started to have offshore wind production in place, except in very small numbers. So it was an interesting project at a particular moment in time.
Are there any implications for the UK that we could take forward around marine spatial planning, but also kind of energy?
There are lots of implications. I think one of the things that we discovered was that in many countries there's a disconnect between the marine system and the land-based system, and those two things don't necessarily join up. We found that in many instances there was a lack of strategic thinking about what we were doing. We were doing things in an ad hoc and incremental way, and there was an opportunity to think much more strategically about where, not just where we locate wind farms, but how we get the energy from the wind farm into the grid. And there was a lot of, at the moment, each wind farm and each connection is almost planned for in an individual basis. There's an opportunity to be much more strategic, and that will save a lot of time and it'll save an enormous amount of money. And that's not just a UK problem, that's also common across most of Europe as well.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Thanks for your time today. If you'd like to know more about Dave's research, you can find his web profile, or you could drop him an email directly if you want to talk through some of these issues. You can find the SBON report in the link below on YouTube or on the SBON website directly. Thanks for your time, Dave.
Pleasure.
Thanks for watching.